Good evening, everyone. It's time to call the school board meeting to order. Today is Monday, January 14th. It is 7:05 p.m. On our agenda this evening, we're going to have the election of the 2019 school board officers. After that takes place, the new board chair will oversee the election of the school board vice chair, the school board clerk, the school board treasurer. The new chair will then manage the rest of the meeting and the agenda. The agenda includes the superintendent's report, our study session topics, our community education adult programs update, the school board meeting dates discussion, school board listening sessions, school board compensation for 2019, school board liaisons and communication, a strategic plan report regarding the Start Times project, the second review of 2019-20 and 2020-21 school year calendar options, the policy development first reading policies 503.3 admission of resident students, 503.4 assignment of students to schools, 503.5 release time for students. Next discussion item is policy development second reading policy 503 student attendance, 503.1 early kindergarten admission, 503.2 school attendance areas. We have a consent agenda. We have an action agenda, including school board compensation, the listening session dates, the school board meeting dates, the school board liaisons. We have on here the approval of the 2019-20 and 2021 school calendar options. However, it is my understanding, since we posted that we were having a listening session on January 19th, we are going to remove this action item from our agenda and wait till we have additional public input. Finally, we have the policy development second reading policies 503 student attendance, 503.1 early kindergarten admission, 503.2 school attendance areas. Next up, we have communications and transmittals, and then the adjournment. So, all of that said, is there a motion to approve this agenda? Moved by Jim Beneke. Is there a second? Second by Mary Tombeck. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That carries 6-0. The next item is the election of the school board chair, and we are looking for the nomination for that.
I would like to nominate Nancy Gores to be board chair for 2019.
And is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion on that? Are there any other nominations for board chair at this point? Are there any other nominations for board chair at this point? Any other nominations for board chair at this point? Hearing none and hearing no further discussion for Nancy Gore's nomination, beyond me saying thank you, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries 6-0. Thank you very much.
So before we move on, thank you all. Before we move on, I just want to say, Karen, thank you so much. I'm sure I can speak for me. I probably could speak for the board. They can also speak for themselves. Thank you so much. You've done a fantastic job the last year. We have been in such good hands, and we're just so grateful. And now we hope you'll just enjoy and still serve with a little less pressure. Thank you. I don't care when you do it.
Well, I'll just go ahead and chime in right now and also express my gratitude to Karen. I came on the board when Karen was reelected last year, and she has been such a wonderful person to learn from and so generous and selfless in her time and her guidance. And I am incredibly grateful to be serving with you. And thank you for all of your wonderful, inspiring leadership as chair last year.
Let me pile on.
Oh, come on.
That sounded great.
Yeah.
I should have just left. I should have started with me and then went to that. But No, I think what the public maybe doesn't realize is how much the board chair is doing behind the scenes. And what I saw and heard Karen doing behind the scenes was just an incredible balancing act, but also an incredible drive to get things done and always focusing on the students, on the kids. So thank you for everything you did last year.
Chair Gores, if may I would also like to just take a moment to thank you. I know that I appreciate the permission and responsibility that you provided as chair and the countless number of hours that we spent together on the phone, via email, to ensure that we were creating an equitable environment for all of our students. So certainly appreciate your leadership. Thank you.
And I'd like to say I appreciate the time Karen has spent here. Karen and I go way back. We've been on countless commissions together. And even though she beat me in my first time around for election, I hardly minded because she's been a great board member and a great encouragement to me. Thank you.
I don't have anything that I could say any better than anyone else has already said it because these guys are amazing. And Karen, it's been a wonderful first year. Thanks to you at the helm, so thank you.
Thanks, Karen. All right. So now we will move on the agenda to the other new officers. It's in January, the first meeting in January, by statute, we all have our organizational meeting. Every school board across the state does this. We are now doing ours. And so do we have a motion to nominate a vice chair?
I would like to nominate Mary Tombeck as vice chair.
It's been made and seconded to nominate Mary Tombeck. Robert's Rules of Order ask that we ask if there are any other nominations. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor of Mary Tombeck as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mary. Next, we have a nomination for school board clerk.
I would like to nominate Jim Beneke as clerk.
And is there a second? Seconded by Karen. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, all in favor of Jim Beneke as clerk, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 6-0.
I would like to nominate Ken Morrison as treasurer.
So Ken Morrison has been nominated as treasurer. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jim. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay. Hearing none, is there any discussion?
Does he have to be present?
I was going to say, I talked with Ken, and he is willing. And that, I think, is the important fact that we need to know. Yeah, I would have been uncomfortable not having, so he was recovering at home from a procedure, and I said, are you able to make an intelligent decision? So the nomination is for Ken Morrison as treasurer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries 6-0.
I'm going to hand the papers over to Jim now as new clerk.
Pressure.
All right, next up, we have the superintendent's report.
Chair Gores, members of the board, prior to starting my superintendent's report, I would just like to thank each of you and congratulate the new officers. I truly appreciate the work that you all do on behalf of our students and families. You know, I'm not a board member, but I certainly get a chance to see the amount of time and effort you put into this job, and I don't think people really understand. I guess you can't really understand it until you do it. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for everything that you're doing for this community, and please know that all of your effort does not go unnoticed. For my report this evening, I would just like to share some information connected to our strategic priorities. The first piece that I would like to share is regarding an upcoming bar conference. So the 2019 National Bar Conference will be hosted here in St. Louis Park on April 11th and April 12th. As you all know, St. Louis Park Public Schools is the home of bar, so we're extremely excited to be hosting the 20th anniversary. And we're even more excited that the keynote address will be from former U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan. So there'll certainly be more information to come as we get closer to this date, but I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the 20th anniversary of bar, and also to just acknowledge the fact that St. Louis Park is the home of bar, and to really, thank you all and board members that have come before you for creating a place and a space of innovation so that things like bar can be started that ultimately benefit all of our students here in the district. The next piece that I wanted to take a moment to mention was public input regarding our school start and end time study. There will be 3 meetings coming up in the month of January. This week on the 17th from 6 to 7:30 at the high school, we'll be hosting a public meeting, and if you can't make it, don't worry. You can tune in to Facebook Live and view the entire meeting there and provide any input or feedback you may have regarding start end times here in the district. There will also be a school board listening session, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later on the agenda, on this Saturday, January 19th from 10:30 to 12 at the district office. And at the end of the month, Tuesday, January 29th from 7 to 8:30, we'll be engaging the community in a conversation through the use of Twitter, through a Twitter town hall. The last piece as part of my report that I would like to acknowledge is that last week we had several of our students from our Roots and Shoots group at the Capitol. Last week there were a group of middle schoolers and high schoolers from across the state that sat down with the governor to talk about climate action. And as you know, here in St. Louis Park, we have a very committed group of youth who have influenced the city of St. Louis Park around the Climate Action Plan. And we've been working with this group of students from Roots and Shoots as we're working on our facilities project here in St. Louis Park Public Schools. At an upcoming meeting, we'll be co-facilitating a facilities update with students from Roots and Shoots in the city to talk about how our projects how we will be working through our projects to create energy sustainability. So congratulations specifically to Katie Christensen, who was quoted and interviewed in a recent MinnPost article connected to their visit to the Capitol last week. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you. Is the January 29 Twitter Town Hall, is that got a specific topic around it, or is that broad, or is that about the school start times primarily?
Chair Gores, is primarily about school start end times, but if there is something that is directly tweeted at us, we certainly will do our best to respond.
Thank you. And so now we're ready to move on to the study session topics. And first up, we have the Community Education Adult Programs Update.
Thank you, Chair Gores, members of the board, Superintendent Osai. Thank you for having us here tonight. We're delighted to talk to you about community education adult programs. My name is Linda Ashe, and I am the Adult Services Manager. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues, Angie Martinez-Grande, who coordinates adult enrichment and volunteer programs, and Chelsea Ritland with the Adult Basic Education, and Mercedes Scott with Project SOAR, our Adults with Disabilities program. I'm very proud to be in adult programs. I'm pleased to be able to contribute to the district mission to offer high-quality opportunities for lifelong learning. And in St. Louis Park, it is just so true that education is for everyone. The Adult Programs Department is the arm of the school district that can really help create connections between community members in the school district, local businesses, other partners, and all of the adults in the community, building support for public education. As you well know, our school district has 78% of households that do not have school-aged children. So it can be increasingly important for a school district such as ours to bring the adults into education, have them experience their own lifelong learning, and in turn, they support lifelong learning of others, as evidenced by the successful passage of the November 16th referendum. 81% of voters, 81% of those who voted approved. I work with the senior program, adult enrichment, and volunteer program, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit first about the senior program. It operates out of Lenox for those focusing on those 55 and up, but we welcome everyone, a person of any age, any adult can participate in the senior program. And we appreciate the recent investment at Lenox for adult lifelong learners as a result of the successful referendum. Renovations are complete. It is just beautiful over at Lenox. I encourage you and members of the public to try a class at Lenox. The updated facilities are just wonderful, and it's a joy to learn there and work there. It couldn't come at a better time because participation in our programs is up. Approximately 2 years ago, we took a jump. We're approximately 17% up, and we've sustained that for 2 years. This year, at mid-year, we're on track to grow in a little bit more modestly, but we are on track for approximate 6% growth this year. And I would also like to publicly thank all the volunteers of the senior program who make it happen. The senior program is a little different from other enrichment programs because it runs on the efforts of approximately 80 volunteers who lead the activities that they are passionate about. So we couldn't have such a wide variety of activities and participation if it weren't for those volunteers, so I thank them. The slides that you're going to see kind of show you and tell you in the words of a couple of our participants what it's like over at Lenox. Our offerings focus on the whole person. We have things to address the mind, body, spirit, and community. So anything from what you're seeing here are folks jamming on stage at our monthly country music jam, yoga, we have lectures, anything from history to art, that kind of class. And it also is a place where people just make those friends and those community connections that keep them coming back week in and week out for their activity, whether it's an exercise group or ballroom dance, mahjong, Scrabble. People get in that group that they feel at home in. Lenox gives people a place where they can feel a sense of belonging, and that enhances our community. I'll turn it over now to Angie.
Good evening. So our volunteer program is a very powerful tool for connection with our community members and our school district. We're holding steady now with 200 to 300 volunteers each year. This last year, we tracked approximately 240 volunteers who gave over 6,000 hours in 22 programs and events in our district. This year, we've seen an increase in volunteers here at the high school helping with the Learning Lab, and we also had an increase in parent volunteers with our Picture Person program at the elementary schools. We also have a number of Spanish-speaking volunteers who help in classrooms at Park Spanish Immersion. This morning I actually gave an orientation to Marley Ritchie, who is a student who graduated from Park Spanish Immersion. And so it's great to see not only parents but students come back into our district to volunteer. You can see we've given $1 worth of service of our volunteers' hours. But what I can't put on a slide is quantifying the effect on the volunteer for them to be able to come into our district and to see our students and to see our teachers in action. Many of our volunteers are retired and they say they want to give back to the community, and often they'll tell me stories of when their children went to this school or that school and how they're so proud to be here in St. Louis Park and to be able to be connected to our schools. Next is our adult enrichment program, and our goal here is to engage community members and provide quality lifelong learning opportunities to all members of our community. And to reach out to all members, we have to start with questions of what are barriers to participation, and over the past couple years, cost is clearly a barrier for participation in almost every area, and this includes adult enrichment. So the success of our program is directly linked to our instructors, organizations, and others who teach, support, and sponsor our programs. We have created 2 new programs, Free for All and Sliding Scale, and these we're hoping will help make classes more affordable for adults to participate. And in the first year of 16-17, we offered 40 free-for-all classes, and 50% of the people who attended those were first-time community education participants. And our registration that year, we saw an increase of 20%. And now this past year, our registration held steady in the 16-17 year, and again, almost half of our free-for-all participants were new participants to community education. And we also piloted our sliding scale classes where the fees are sliding scale based on household income. And we offered 11 classes, and half of those people attending in those were also new to community education. Pictured here on the slideshow are a few of our instructors in both our free-for-all and our sliding scale classes. On the top left there, that's Rachel Holgraffer, and she teaches Yoga for All and Yoga for Everybody. On the top right is Luis Versailles, and he's offered some Courageous Conversations classes with us. And then the bottom right is Elizabeth Rowan Keith, who offers our Native American study classes. Also, the Community Education Advisory Council offers a series in our free-for-all section called Heart of the Matter. We've actually seen a shift of how people want to engage in community education, and so we've tried to create a new framework to help these people engage. In our 2017-18 year, 20% of our registrations came from these small groups, where they're organic and local groups who want to come and use our space, groups like Allies of St. Louis Park, groups that want to do yoga or basketball or art, and they want to partner with adult enrichment to have comfortable and accessible spaces for their groups. We also want to encourage you to engage with adult enrichment as the school board. You should have our brochures in front of you, so if you're interested in taking a class, you can contact me if you're interested in teaching a class, and I am looking for volunteer facilitators for our Westminster Forum series that's starting soon. The next piece is the partnerships that we curate with adult enrichment. And this helps us create a robust program so we can have different kinds of offerings. Our community ed instructors, this is where our local entrepreneurs and businesses come into play, where they're offering classes like Write Your Own Will, or How to Sell Your House, How to Buy a New House, Glass Blowing, and many other of our classes. We've also partnered with Hennepin County Libraries and Friends of the Arts to offer classes in our free-for-all section. And we've also partnered with the curriculum department here in the district to offer the Native American video series, as well as providing CEUs for qualifying classes. I've been a member of the Racial Equity Community Partners Group, and this is made up of engaged citizens and community groups, including the City of St. Louis Park, the school district, and City Council, and we meet regularly with a mission to build a racial equity culture in St. Louis Park. I've also been working with Rick Cryer, Prachi Mukherjee, and 2 colleagues as a facilitator for the racial affinity groups for staff of color in our district. And this partnership personally helps feed my soul as a person of color working in a white dominant culture district, as well as working to meet the needs of our staff of color to help create a positive work environment for all staff, as well as to help us reach our Strategy 2 goals of recruiting and retaining staff of color. With the help of Mary Tomback, we've submitted a grant request to Medtronic to help further the work of the racial affinity groups for staff of color. Being a member of the Multicultural Advisory Committee, or the MAC, with the St. Louis Park Police Department has also provided many partnership events. You may have seen our community forum on immigration or attended our educational iftar dinners. We've held the iftar dinners for 2 years in a row, and we'll hold it again this spring. Mark your calendars for May 15th. And then we also did the sweet potato comfort pie event. and that was to bring attention to our Somali neighbors who were grieving after the bombing in Mogadishu. Lastly, our volunteer program partners with service organizations such as the Women with the Order of the Eastern Star. They were seeking an opportunity to be engaged with our school district, and so we were able to find volunteer opportunities for them to come in and work with our staff and students.
Good evening. My name is Chelsea Ritland. I'm the coordinator of the Adult Basic Education Program for the St. Louis Park, Hopkins, and Minnetonka school districts called Adult Options in Education. And at Adult Options, the majority of adult learners that we serve are immigrants or refugees. The classes reflect the diversity that we're fortunate to have in the St. Louis Park community in the West Metro, with nearly 100 different countries represented by our students in our classrooms. Classes are free, and you do not need to reside within the district boundaries in order to attend. And adult learners decide to enroll in adult basic education for a variety of reasons. The four most common goals adult learners have are English language acquisition, obtaining a secondary credential such as a GED or a state standard adult diploma, continuing on education into college, and preparing for a career. And so some of the program outcomes in these four areas that I'm happy to share with you this evening, our Adult Options in Education was #1 in the state recently for ESL level gains, meaning we had the highest percentage of ESL learners moving from one ESL level, so beginning ESL, for example, and up onto the next level, intermediate ESL. Of those students that had a goal of obtaining a secondary credential, 86% obtained their GED, and Adult Options was #3 in the state for measurable skill gains for GEDs. Those that had a goal to continue on to post-secondary, 8% continued and entered college. And those with a goal of career, 46% got a job. So all of our classes are guided by the Minnesota ABE state content standards in college and career readiness, employability skills, and digital literacy. All of our staff are licensed educators, and our 3 St. Louis Park teachers have a combined 45 years of ABE instruction experience here in the St. Louis Park School District. Our staff and students are supported by an amazing group of dedicated volunteers that have logged over 20,000 hours in the past 10 years in supporting our students to achieve their goals. We're always welcoming new volunteers into our program that are passionate about seeing adults in our community meet those goals and succeed. In the last school year, there were about 210 adults attending our St. Louis Park School and a little over 1,000 consortium-wide. So over 20,000 hours of learning was happening at our St. Louis Park site in last school year. And I just want to make a note of the significant number of our adult learners that have school-age children, K-12, and children 0 to 5. We're cognizant of that, and we're supporting our adult learners to become those partners with their child's education, to empower them to feel confident to navigate the American school system, and are often the first face of the school district to our adult learners who have children 0 to 5. One of the ways that we do that is as well as through our family literacy program for parents and ECFE, children that are 0 to 5. Some of the partnerships that I'd like to highlight for you this evening are with the St. Louis Park Police Department, the Joint Community Police Partnership New Americans Academy, which is offered by the JCPP annually to our students, in which they come away with a stronger relationship between our community members and the police department, and students are offered important information on community resources, safety, and police protocol. Our partnership with AmeriCorps, in which we're able to offer basic computer skills classes and provide an employment navigator to meet one-on-one with our students. Our partnership with the Workforce Center, now called Career Force, in supporting that goal of entering the workforce and improving those career skills. All of our employer partnerships, specifically our healthcare partners. We have a strong healthcare career pathways option within our program where students can take classes like certified nursing assistant and medical terminology to enter that workforce. And as well as the St. Louis Park District themselves as a partner. You can see here a picture on the right of our HR representative, Lisa Gurdon, at a career fair on site with our students last spring. and our College Connection Specialist, who specializes on partnering with the many community colleges and four-year universities in our area to help our students transition on to post-secondary. One grant to highlight is our civics grant. These are federal dollars that supports a deepening of civic engagement for our St. Louis Park students. And finally, a partnership to highlight is the Minnetonka Rotary, which provides $2,000 annually for our GED graduates who can apply for and compete to receive a scholarship that helps them transition onto community college or four-year degree. And you can see here as well a picture on the right of our 2018 GED graduation of Superintendent Osai providing our keynote remark there. So of course our adult learners are the best ambassadors of this program, and so I'd like to leave you with the words of two GED graduates from 2018 who really embody how the power of education has helped transform their lives and the lives of their family through our ABE program. And with that, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Mercedes Scott.
Good evening. I am delighted to be here this evening and share with you just a little glimpse of what Project SOAR is. We are, again, under the adult umbrella. We are a consortium of St. Louis Park, Wayzata, Hopkins, and Minnetonka school districts. We have been around for a long time, since the 80s, over 32 years Project SOAR has been around, and we serve adults with disabilities, basically 18 plus and up. Our oldest customer is 81 years old right now. And we serve we have about 2,200 registrations a year, so that means 2,200 different types of not 2,200 different types of classes, but 2,200 people are registering in our various activities, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. So we offer kind of on a smaller scale what community ed does. We have a catalog that we publish 3 times a year, and we have anything from arts and crafts, sewing, cooking, enrichment types of activities. We also do quite a bit of a focus on social activities, getting adults with disabilities, many of which reside in these residential facilities and are around the same people all day long, getting them out into our communities and interacting socially with other adults with disabilities and with non-disabled people as well. We offer, this past year we offered over 160 courses through our catalogs. Our classes are specifically designed and adapted to meet all abilities. And what we mean by that is anybody who participates in one of our activities can complete whatever activity we're offering. An example of that is we have a participant, a young man who is blind, and he attends every single one of our arts and craft classes, and you should see the amazing projects that he is able to complete and the social interaction that happens in that activity. Our courses are all taught by SOAR instructors and strongly supported by volunteers in our community, and most specifically by the high schools that we have in our consortium. Their high school students actually come in and assist with our classes, in addition to parents and family of customers. As I mentioned, we are a consortium, but Lenox and the St. Louis Park community plays a very strong role in our program. The St. Louis Park residents comprise over 16% of our annual registration, and they're actually our second highest level of participation in our consortium districts. The facilities that St. Louis Park offers for our activities and our classes are just amazing and a perfect fit for us. They're easily accessible to all of our participants. The locations are very centralized, and now with the beautiful renovation at Lenox, the rooms are even better for the activities that we provide. About 95% of our arts and craft classes are held at Lenox in St. Louis Park, and in addition to monthly social events such as bingo, where we get anywhere from 50 to 80 people in there every month for that. Ice Cream Social is happening this evening right down the street, so if you want ice cream or root beer floats, I invite you to stop by Lenox. We had 653 participants last year who walked through a St. Louis Park facility door to attend a Project SOAR activity, and that's a pretty amazing number. And in summary, we personally, myself and our participants, just love St. Louis Park, your community, what it has to offer. Looking ahead, what's up for us? We have a couple of areas of focus. There are many things on our to-do list right now, but kind of the key ones are we want to continue to grow our program for young adults with disabilities, and more specifically, that age group where they're finishing high school, going either out into the community or going into a Transition Plus program. That's a population that's been hard for us to attract to programs such as ours. So there will be a strong emphasis on that for us this coming year and in the years ahead to promote our program, to develop those relationships, work with your Transition Plus coordinators, families, and parents of the young disabled adults, and even start at the high school developing those relationships to make sure they know programs such as ours exist and can tap into that. We want to enhance our community facilities and what's available. For example, you have St. Louis Park is an amazing aquatic park, which we used for the first time last summer for an activity, and I want to do a lot more and just take the beauty that we have around us and the facilities that we have and continue to promote that and host activities there. We want to expand our staff and volunteers within our consortium communities. My programs, such as the same as the other programs that were here this evening, really rely heavily on those volunteers and specifically stronger connections with the high school volunteer programs and get the youth, the interaction between the young, the students and our disabled population is just amazing to watch the dynamics when that happens. And then lastly on here, another priority for us, we've submitted a grant request to Allina Health for healthy cooking classes where they come in and learn recipes that are easy, affordable, and healthy that they can replicate at home. I invite you to visit us. We have a Facebook page, so please visit, learn more about Project SOAR. Follow us on Facebook and also our website. We post lots of pictures of activities and events. We are always looking for volunteers. Any questions, please contact us, and thank you.
Any questions or comments?
Angie, it was great to hear about Marley because I met her when our daughters were in ECFE together. So it's so awesome that she's coming back as a volunteer at PSI. Thank you.
I just want to say hooray and thank you for being here and telling us all about the amazing things. As a member of the Community Ed Advisory Council, I've gotten to see some of this in pieces over the past year as a participant, and as some of you have actually come to that group and talked about, I know Project SOAR, you came and talked about it. I got to attend the GED graduation last year, which was amazing. I was trying to think of other things that I had kind of gotten to see, the Heart of the Matter programs, gotten to know a lot of the participants in the senior program. And what I love about our community ed program is that sometimes it can feel like, especially adult programs, I know senior programs can sort of feel like glommed onto a school district without necessarily fitting. But ours always feels like it fits. It feels like it fits our mission. I wanted to quote this exactly. One of our mission outcomes: all community members will be involved in learning opportunities of interest to them that are intellectually engaging, community enriching, physically energizing, and enhance the spirit. So all of those things, that doesn't say like all kids between ages of 4 and 18. That says all community members, and that's what you're doing. You're fulfilling our mission, which is amazing. So thank you, and thank you for coming here to tell us all about this, and I'm excited to see more.
Thank you. I'm curious whether you have a use for volunteers at the Adult Basic Education Program and how you might use volunteers there.
Yes, thank you for that question. Absolutely. We have an amazing group of volunteers that support teachers in the classroom. So we're always open to new volunteers. They can contact us at our main number, 952-988-5343, or visit us at our website, adultoptions.org. And there's great training in the state of Minnesota through the Minnesota Literacy Council and other in-house training that if somebody hasn't yet worked with an adult in a classroom in an educational setting, there's training there that we can provide. So there's one-on-one tutoring and then assisting teacher in the classroom support. That's of great value to helping our learners meet their goals. Yeah, thank you.
Good, thank you for that. If anybody's interested, that's how you do it.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for being here and taking your time and sharing the great work that you're all doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move into a period of items on the agenda that relate to our organizational meeting for this first meeting in January. We're going to start with school board meeting dates, and I think everybody, we have a list of the school board meeting dates. Anne noticed for us that one of the proposed meeting dates is November 11th, which is Veterans Day, and we probably need to change that. We can either only meet once in November, or, we could meet the 4th, which is the day before whatever is up for election, or we could meet, two weeks in a row, November 18th. Anybody have any thoughts on what we want to do in November?
I would prefer to not skip the meeting. I think that's still towards the beginning of the year, and there seems to be a lot of stuff we still like to catch up on and be learning about and listening to. So I would vote to still have the meeting and not just skip it entirely. I think either the 18th or the 4th, or could we do November 12th, Tuesday evening?
That's what we do for Memorial Day.
Does November 12th work for people? That's a better ratio, but I think, Jim, you might have a conflict.
It wouldn't work for me, but
Well, why don't, if the board's comfortable with this, I'll just confer with Aston and we'll recommend whatever the date in November seems to work best for the workflow. Does that seem all right? Okay. And then next up, we are going to talk about school board listening sessions. Aston mentioned this in his superintendent's report. We have our first one scheduled for this Saturday, January 19th, from 10:30 to 12. It will be at the district office conference room, and the new district office for a few years anyway, until Central's remodeled. The new district office is at 63311 Wayzata Boulevard, so that's just off the frontage road south of 394 and a little bit west of TGI Fridays, to give you a rough thing. And when you get to that point, you turn and you go behind the building where there's the parking lot, and then you come in that back door, and Julia's going to be gracious enough to be there and receive anybody who comes, and then we just go in and down the hall to the left, and there's a large conference room. I believe that Anne and Jim are going to be at that listening. Is that all right with you still,
yeah,
Jim?
that's great. That would be great.
And we've got room for one more, if anybody else wants to join the fun.
I cannot do that one.
Okay.
I'll do a subsequent one.
So we'll just go with that, and if anybody else wants to, just let us know. Our practice is, if nobody shows up, it's conference room 1A, but we'll have signs, and we'll have Julia. And if nobody shows up within the first 30 minutes, so it's set to start at 10:30, if nobody's there by 11, then we're going to call it closed, and everybody will go on their way. But if people want to come, it's a good opportunity to see part of the new district office space. And, there are some pending things you might want to talk with us about. It might be about school start times. It might be about the calendar. It might be about some other joy or concern that anybody at home has. And we're just welcome anyone who wants to come and talk to us. The other thing I'll mention, since we're talking about school board communication, is that if you're on the website, there are some email addresses for us. Although we don't respond to emails, we receive your comments. But we have a policy of not responding substantively to emails. We'll just acknowledge that we got it. And we also have a hotline. So if people want to call in and leave a message, a voice message for us, all board members will hear that, and one person will get back to you if you ask for someone to get back to you, and if you leave a phone number that we can understand. So, if all of that happens, we're happy to give you a call back. And our hotline number is 952-928-6041. That's 952-928-6041. So lots of ways that we like to stay engaged with our community, and when we aren't just meeting each other out and about. So next up, we have the school board compensation, which we need to look at every January. And the information is out there. We sort of are in the, yeah.
Just in the school calendar, we have the number. The school board message line is 928-6040.
Yeah, but the preface is 952.
Yes.
No, thank you. It is 952-928-6040. Yeah. So now we take a look at school board compensation, and we have some information here just to sort of orient the public at large. We are probably at the midpoint. We're actually maybe at the midpoint for compensation, maybe a little bit lower than the midpoint. Actually, we're lower than the midpoint for other school districts at this point in time. We last raised any of the compensation for the board members in fiscal year 16, which means we did it at the beginning of January 2016. So now we're looking into our 5th year where we haven't raised the compensation at all. And so the people at home know currently the director's at $4,500, the treasurer's at $4,500, the clerk is at $4,800, $4,800, and the chair is at $5,100 or $5,100. So it's not, nobody's paying their mortgages off of this. It's more of a stipend, and it sort of permits people to thank those who are watching kids, or thank families, or cover gas and other incidentals of the service we do. I think the city council, when this comes up, people hate to vote raises for themselves. Somehow they tend to get reluctant. The city council is sort of taking care of it by adapting a resolution where they give themselves the same percentage of wage raise that they give on average to their other employees, just as a point of information. So now, does anybody want to make a motion about, or discuss before there's a motion about what we want to do with respect to any compensation for the coming year?
I'll just make one additional comment. I can't remember if it's in that packet or not. There's also an amount, I think it's $50 for any special meetings, but most of the time we will attempt to append a special meeting to the actual meeting. So for example, tonight we had a pre-meeting that ran from 5:30 to 7, which we were not compensated for because it's the same evening as a regular meeting. But that's an additional thing that comes up from time to time. That's additional compensation, but it's generally, we generally do not have meetings outside of regular nights unless we are searching for a superintendent, which we will not be doing for a very long time.
So now is the time for just any discussion, and we get to the action item later on, so I'll just invite any discussion.
Just one piece that I'd like us to consider as we look to recruit additional people to consider running for elected office. As you know, our board is primarily white, and we are hoping to reach out to more people of color to become elected because our students are 40% students of color. So as you think about people who perhaps have multiple jobs and constraints on their time, I think I calculated this out, I'm making about $5.72 an hour when all is said and done. And that actually is not gonna pay the babysitter, right? So as we have this discussion about school board compensation and thinking about moving forward, it's not a role to make a living off of. That's not the purpose of it. We want people to serve the community and to serve our students. But it might make a difference for somebody to be able to consider it. And frankly, just running for election costs some money. So to have a little bit of that offset with a slightly better compensation package might be a useful tool.
And I just wanted to offer a little bit of clarity to Nancy, what you did say, just for some perspective. So in a comparison of the 34 school districts in the metro, there are only 2 that have lower compensation rates than St. Louis Park, and that's only by a couple of $100. You said, the director, we are at $4,500. There's one other school district at $4,500, one at $4,300, and one at $4,200. Everyone else is higher than we are here.
Chair, members of the board, I did do a wage and salary survey of all of the board meetings that all of our HR directors in the area compiled the information that you have in front of you. And as we look at moving we also want to attract and retain high quality board members for our board. So with that, we did have a recommendation that the board stay in the pack with salaries and do approve an increase for the board. And I know it is hard to vote yourself an increase, but I do think it's just when you look at the comparison of all the districts around us.
All right, any more discussion? We'll revisit this again at the action item, so I just wanted to give us a chance to talk before we entertain motions later on.
I don't know if this is helpful after what Rick just said, but I was involved in an interesting conversation about board compensation at an MSBA coffee, and one district suggested, I don't think they'd actually done this, but this was something that they were considering, was passing an increase that would affect their successors, so as to kind of make the point that we realize that we need to do more to recruit, but that it didn't look as much like they were. Yeah. So just a thought of a way to, if not now, to be able to do something like that made more of an impact in the future.
So would it maybe look like we kind of have 3 on an election cycle, 4 on an election cycle? So is it something that would be acceptable to people that the 4 people who are up for election, those individuals who are either reelected or replaced, that is where the compensation change would happen, and then the next election cycle, the next 3 people? Because I could live with that, because I'm in that second batch. Yeah, is there, I don't know that MSBA or the state legislature have much in the way of guideline for salary structure, especially looking at the wide range of, at a district I will not name, their chair makes $15,600 a year. So I think there's quite a lot of leeway with what we might be thinking. But, you know, we do have this listening session coming up on Saturday. Our taxpayers and constituents might have something to say about this. The school board message line would also be a great place for people to weigh in on their thoughts about this. So we don't necessarily have to make a decision today, but I do think it is a fair discussion to have, especially considering it's been 5 years. Okay, good to note that.
And, well, just my thought is, my personal preference is that everyone gets whatever they get, and we don't make it complicated by when is your election cycle up and when is it not, and then somebody feels a little weirded out because the pay scale's a little, I don't know. It just feels like if we're going to do it, we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do, and if it's not the right thing to do, we shouldn't do it.
I was going to say that too, actually. Keep it simple. Let just all of us be on the same schedule, whether we decide to wait or not. Keep us all on the same schedule. Also, are we required to make this decision at this organizational meeting? I feel like I recall reading something that recommendation or requirement. Julia, do you know? No, sorry.
Well, by the time we get to the action item, perhaps we'll have figured that out. Yep, we do it at this meeting. And we can figure this out. It's not going to be rocket science. So next up is the school board liaison and communication. And so that people at home are watching know, we have, each board member has a liaison with a particular school, and we try to change those up periodically. And we run those from basically June to the end of the program year. So this year through graduation in June of 2019, Ann Casey is with Aquila, Ken Morrison is at Peter Hobart, Joe Tatalovich is that right? Joe, are you at Susan Lindgren? And then,
I'm at the middle school.
yeah, that's right. Mary Tombeck is at Susan Lindgren, and Joe Tatalovich is at the middle school. Jim Beneke, you're at the high school? Or is it Ken?
I'm at Peter Hobart.
You're at Peter Hobart? Try that again. Ann Casey's at Aquila. Jim is at Peter Hobart. Mary is at Susan Lindgren. Joe is at the middle school, and Ken is at the high school. I have been the PSI liaison, but as I've switched to chair, Karen will pick up the PSI liaison through the rest of the year. And then I anticipate that we'll have a meeting probably in May and talk about what changes we want to make for the next coming year. And because Joe is our current representative to the City Planning Commission, and his term expires in May. So we'll have an opportunity to talk about those things and any other potentially shifts people are looking at. And then we have the other list that the board's aware of who's at AMSD, which is Ken and Ann Casey. Anybody can attend those meetings, so is that right, Ann? Yeah, so if you're a board member who wants to go to AMSD, you're free to go to those meetings. Ken is still with the Athletic Advisory Committee. I've been at the liaison for the Central Clinic. Joe is at the City Planning Commission. Karen and Ann will be with SEAC. Intermediate 287, I've been our rep there since 2013, but I am very pleased to say that Ann Casey became our rep to 287, effective in already been to her first meeting and been sworn in, so thank you, Ann. And then the Lennox Senior Program would be Jim Beneke. The MSBA Legislative Liaison, I have Ken and Jim here. No, everybody is free to do whatever lobbying they want with the legislature, however, there's no limitation on reaching out. Ken loves snack, and Joe is with St. Louis Park Business Council, Twin Fest. We have Bruce Richardson as our prior board member and Mary working with Dollars for Scholars. Joe is with STEP. Ties we're done with. WEMAP, Karen is going to complete our tenure there, which we hope will be done by June. Thank you, Karen, for all you do there. Oh, man. And then we have the FAC committee is Joe and Mary. The DPAC, I've got Mary here. The strategic planning core team right now is Ann, Casey, and Mary Tomback. And if we begin to move into the next strategic planning, we may want to revisit or not revisit those. We have options down the road. There's a city school subcommittee, and I have Jim Beneke, Ken Morrison, and Mary Tomback on that. Is that still existing or not?
It's not really a thing necessarily right now, but we are at the ready.
Okay. If you're ready, should there be something to talk about? We also, as a school board, make a few appointments to city commissions. We give an appointment to the City Human Rights Commission, one to City Parks and Rec, and one to the City Telecom Advisory Committee. That's been Ralph Peterson, and his term is still good to go till May 31 of 2019. We're still getting information on what appointments may have expired or need to be made for the City Human Rights Commission and the Park and Recs Commission, and I hope that we'll have that information for us at our next meeting, and then we can revisit our process for that. Ann, you had raised a comment that I totally agree with and wanted you to
Well, I just hadn't seen an update from any of these committees in my year, so I didn't know if that was just hadn't happened yet, or if it was going to, and if we would, if we could, I guess, have those folks in to a meeting, or just to provide some kind of connection to what they're doing on those committees, so that we can kind of hear what our liaisons are doing.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing I don't think we've done well, is staying in touch with them once we've appointed them, or they with us. And I think that is a good idea to try to work on coming up with a plan to how to do that better.
If nothing else, just to say thank you.
Yeah. So until we get to the consent agenda, we're going to move off of school board stuff, and we're going to move back to our district work, and we're going to get a strategic plan report on start times.
Thank you, Chair Gores. Members of the board, Superintendent Osai, tonight I'm just going to give you a brief update on where we're at with the school start and end times study. We are 2 meetings into the process, and January is input month, so I wanted to just bring you along and talk about where we're at. I always start with some background. I think it's not always top of mind of exactly what are our start times. How does this work? And so we have 3 tiers in St. Louis Park. Most of our buses make 3 full loops around our school district, both in the morning and after school. Our earliest start is 7:33 for the middle school. Our latest start is 9:20 at Susan Lindgren Elementary School. So you can see we've got a pretty wide span of time that our schools are starting around the district. Why are we here? Why are we studying start times? And this all goes back to our strategic plan, as most of our work does. In 2015, we looked at our strategic plan. We realized that enrollment was increasing and that our facilities were getting older. And so we did a study, successfully passed a wonderful referendum, courtesy of our community. And with that, we have Park Spanish Immersion School moving from the central Cedar Manor, or central PSI site now to the Cedar Manor site across town. And so with that change, as well as at a time when we were hearing parent concerns from all grade levels. So elementary parents were concerned that times were late, and that was creating some challenges there. Middle school parents and middle school students in particular were obviously a little bit concerned about that early time. High school parents in the middle, shockingly, half and half. Some wanted to come earlier, some wanted to come later. And so for all of those reasons, as well as a strong body of research coming from academics across not only the United States but the world around sleep and students and age-appropriate times, we decided that now was the time to really dig into this and look at what was best in St. Louis Park. So just to be super clear, I've said this before, but it's worth saying again, we don't have a plan. We really have a piece of white paper. Anything's possible in terms of what we do going forward. We just are really terribly interested in academically, what is best practice, what have other districts done, and most importantly, what do our stakeholders really think is best for us, both students, parents, teachers and staff, as well as the greater community. The charge of the project team, I won't read it in sum for you, you can read it on the screen, certainly, but what's most important here is that we're really looking at the student. This is a student-focused effort. We want to be sure that they are healthy and they are ready for school and ready to learn. And so as I said, we're looking at research, best practice, and getting a wide swath of input from our stakeholders to help us with this work. And we will be presenting the work of the committee to you, along with several options for you to review and possibly make a change as we move forward. So where are we at? As I mentioned, the team has met twice, and January is input month. The superintendent and myself have well over 45 meetings scheduled across the district during the month of January, so we'll be getting our steps in for sure. Talking to people, asking for their input, what do they think, what's most important to them? And so that will come back to the district. I liken it to a ball of Play-Doh, we will squish it together and put it in a lovely report that the project team can look at and use as another data point as they prepare options. And so at their next meeting in early February, they'll prepare options. And then we'll take those options back out on the road to the similar 45 plus meetings in mid to late February and ask for feedback. We heard you, this is what the group made, now what do you think? And so it's a different kind of input. And then we'll come back again to the committee and they'll digest all of that information and then be back in front of you in early March to present you with their best thoughts and best work around what they would recommend for start times. And so hoping you can look at it, hear it, discuss it, and if it's something we want to move forward with, we're hoping administratively that we could get action either before or shortly thereafter spring break, because then we really need to dig our heels in because we've got to figure out how to move all these students around the district and have the bus routes ready for parents and staff for fall of 19. Just wanted to give you a brief, really high-level overview of the academic research. It's not shocking. Many people have heard it, whether it's on an NBC report, an NPR report. It seems like once or twice a week you can find an article or a posting about sleep research. Elementary students are ready to learn early in the morning. We know this. Those of us who have tiny humans at home, they're up early, they're ready to go. Not shockingly, preteens, they're pretty flexible. They can go early, they can go late, and they're pretty malleable in terms of going with the flow. High school students sleep more, we know this, but they especially sleep more when they sleep later. And this is actually tied to hormone levels, and studies have shown time and again that the ideal high school sleep time is actually 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I don't have a high schooler myself, but I've heard from others that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, and what we're learning over and over and over again in each of these studies, and this is true for students as well as adults, is that sleep has really become a public health issue. There's really not enough sleep for anybody of any age. And less sleep has equaled risky behaviors, increased car accidents, and increased rates of mental health issues as well. We looked at best practice from other districts. We are not alone. Here is just a partial list of districts close to us that are looking at this research and have acted recently. So the list on the left, including Edina, is districts that studied this and implemented changes. On the right are districts who studied this extensively but didn't decide to change. So the work is being done across the metro. We thought it was important that we look at not only the metro and the academic research, but really drive home what do St. Louis Park parents say. So this is parents who live in the St. Louis Park district as well as parents who open enroll. We did a random survey by phone in December, and what we found was that if we could have a magic wand and all of our schools could start at 8 or 8:30 a.m., everyone would be happy. So Unfortunately, we don't have a magic wand, but we do have some advice from our parents. Elementary parents, 64% said it's about the right start time, but 46% would also favor or strongly favor an earlier start. And I should note, you don't want to do the math to add these up here. These are pulling percentages from various questions in the survey. Middle school parents favor or strongly favor a later start. As I referenced earlier, high school parents are split. They prefer earlier or later. But again, going back to really what can everybody agree on, start times as they are currently, children are getting enough sleep. So parents feel that kids are really getting enough sleep right now the way things are. They're not perceiving issues about getting to school in the morning, and they're not having concerns about start times and reflecting on activities if we would change them. So these are issues that have come up in other school districts that we were querying here in St. Louis Park to see if they had an impact. As I mentioned, it is feedback month in January. And so we are getting input across the board. This Thursday, there is a public meeting. It will be at 6 p.m. right here in room C350. We will also be broadcasting Facebook Live. So if you have a prior commitment, you can certainly log in through your Facebook account, watch the meeting, as well as ask questions that way. And there is a school board meetings listening session coming up this Saturday that we've talked about. The other date to mark your calendar for is January 29th. We're doing a Twitter town hall. Another opportunity where you can be comfortable in your home, you can be at work, you can be playing soccer or tennis if that's what is going on in your life that night, and you can participate that way. And as I mentioned, we'll make a second trip back through the community in February with options. And so, as I mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities here to provide input and feedback. We're also launching a new community engagement tool with the School Start and End Time study. It's called Thought Exchange. And it is an online software platform that allows people to share thoughts, feedback, and ideas in an open-ended and confidential way. And so this will be hosted on our district website. It allows us to reach more people in less time, engage more meaningfully, and build trust. And so it's another way we can intersect with families. What we love most about it is that if you are a native Spanish speaker or a native Somali speaker, you could be a native Russian speaker, and you can have this input opportunity delivered to you in your home language. And so we're super excited to see what this is like for our families and if this is another way to increase engagement. So we will be opening that up later this week for input. And so you'll get an invitation from me, school board members, to participate, and we will also be sending out links for our families to participate as well. These are the questions we're asking, just so you have an idea if you're a person who likes to think ahead about what you might provide. Question 1 is, what should the team consider as they develop the proposals? And how should the team use all of this breadth of information that's being gathered? Those are the 2 questions we're asking right now. We're really looking for a baseline of what do people think about start times. And with that, I will close my computer and ask if you have any questions.
I'm just curious, this Twitter, what do you call it, town
Twitter
meeting?
town hall, yeah.
Is that a first? Have we tried that before?
We actually tried it during the referendum last year and had great success with it. And so it was just a different way for us to engage with our stakeholders. And the way it works, Jim, is, as I mentioned, people can be wherever they want to be in St. Louis Park or even the world. We actually had a few alumni participate in this last year. And they can tweet at us. We have a hashtag that's set up. They can ask questions, they can provide comments, and we will have a team of advisors in a conference room tweeting back. So we will answer questions, we will provide comments, provide info as we go during the Twitter town hall. So it's new and it's different. Worked last year with the referendum, so we thought we'd try it again this year.
And the thought exchange, are they communicating with the administration or with each other? Is there interaction between them?
Yeah, they're actually communicating with each other. So works a little bit like Twitter. It's kind of a Twitter meets Facebook combo. So we pose a question and we invite people to participate and share their thoughts. And so you will share a thought, and at the same time you share your thought, it's anonymous, you share your thought, moderated also with rules, just so we're clear on the ground rules. You have to be kind and compassionate to others, but you post your thought, and then it's got a great feature in that you also review other people's thoughts, and you can rate them, and you can respond to them. And so it creates an online environment where you can have a conversation. And what's interesting is that it's really driven by your mobile device. It's driven by your phone. You can also certainly access it on your iPad or your computer or any other device, but it's really meant to be quick, easy, and activated by your mobile device. So.
Good.
Under Superintendent, we talked a lot about elevating student voice, so I would just like to emphasize that students are welcome to email school board members, to attend any of these listening sessions, to get on Twitter, to show up on the Facebook. I know that they don't use Facebook anymore, that's just for old people. I've personally heard a couple of students, they happen to live in my house, but I also wanted to emphasize what you said, Sarah, is that we are all going into this with no set plan, no preconceived notions actually at all. I'm personally conflicted looking at what happens at my house at about 6:15 in the morning, but what the research says. So please, other students, reach out to us however you want to, however is easiest, but we would all like to hear from the students as well.
Well, and Vice Chair Tombeck, I do want to add that in our 45 or so meetings, we are visiting with students. And so we're gathering input at all grade levels. So at our elementary grades, they have some loosely formed student councils and other student groups. So we're visiting them, as well as our middle school and multiple groups at the high school. And so you will see a very strong student contingent of input and feedback.
I did see a question on the district social media about how this is being communicated to parents of students in our early learning programs now who aren't in the K-12 system yet. Can you speak to that?
Yep, I sure can. So our early learning parents are in our school messenger system, just like all of our K-12 parents, and so they will receive the link as well, and an invitation as well as directions to participate. So all of our parents, E12, as well as all of our staff, E12, will be invited to participate.
Sarah, can you just talk a little bit, prior to coming to this meeting, weren't you with early childhood families?
I was. Speaking of track shoes, actually just tonight I met with the Early Childhood Parent Council. I might have their name wrong, but the leadership of the early childhood parents invited me to come tonight and talk about start times and the process and offer their input. And they will be also sharing it out to their parent groups and inviting them to attend our public meetings.
We've referenced this as just a blank sheet of paper, but I think we do have some budgetary restrictions on what we're willing to pay for transportation. So, I mean, I would say personally, when it comes back to the board, that it should be relatively neutral, but I think if I'm just speaking for myself as one of normally 7 folks, that if it does come out to be a groundswell for a system that does cost a little more, we should be able to take a look at that and say, you know, we're willing to pay that or we're not willing to pay that. So I would just say, you know, that part of it is open, but it's not totally open to Uber and Lyft for every kid or whatever they do nowadays. So I just wanted to mention that, or get your maybe some feedback on how you are broaching the budget subject with stakeholders.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Pavlovich. So I went back into the presentation and pulled up the charge statement for the project team. And part of this is that we will use extensive research, best practices, input, and the parameters of the school district budget. And so the committee has been informed that we are hoping for a cost neutral approach. And much like you said, if there is, you know, a bubble up or perhaps even a bubble down on these options, when they come forward to you, they will also include a budget impact line. So you're very clear on what each proposal will do to the district budget. And our new business and finance person, Patricia Magnuson, has been through this many times before. And so she is also working in concert with our work as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. That was my question, too, because we did this several years back, and my memory was we did really have to pay attention to how many bus options we were going to run and the time it took a bus to run its route and then back and run its other route and get back and run its other route. And while I don't have an opinion about the specifics of how this analysis falls out this time, I do have a concern. And I remember what ended up last time is, and everybody knows the middle school starts sooner, and the middle school took the hit on that, starting a little bit earlier than I think people would have liked. But the thinking, at least that I had, was, well, everybody usually hits the middle school once in their career, K through 12, so everybody takes the hit for a shorter period of time and has the time they feel a little better about in the elementary years and has the time they feel a little better about in their high school years. And I'm really sorry we have to do this to you in the middle school the last time we took a look at this. So I don't know I'll be curious to hear if push comes to shove, how the feedback comes in when you're not dealing in the ideal world, and if people have a different way of slicing and dicing those concerns.
Absolutely. So we're interested in that, as well as, we're in a different place in time now, in that not only is it buses, but it's the labor. We've all read about the bus driver shortages, and so the labor population for transportation is also a little bit different now, so that's something we're mindful of. And sitting ad hoc as part of the group is representation from Park Adam Transportation, as well as MTI, which provides our special ed busing, as well as the person who does the routing. So the kind of the back end systems work around, okay, here's all the students, now we have to get them to their schools. How's that going to work? And so they're also participating in the process, providing guidance and reports and information to help guide us and answer questions, because we all have a lot of questions about, so how does that work? How do you know where my child is and that you need to pick them up, as well as 85 other kids, and get them to school?
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Rick Cryer, and we're going to talk about school calendar options. It's a second review, one of Rick's favorite job duties. I say facetiously because everybody has an opinion and they don't always all align.
But it's getting closer and closer. Okay. You do this to me. Okay, so this is, yeah. So again, we have met again with our employee groups. We have a listening session scheduled. We have 2 calendars before the board that we wanted to bring as an update as of the best thinking that we have so far. Calendars before you are fairly straightforward. I think the biggest things that we looked at were, what are we doing around professional development? Is it making a difference? Are there things that we could do more effectively? Both the calendars that we have for the 1920 and then the 2021 year do have recommendations to remove the early release days, where then there was about roughly 90 minutes of PD at the end of the day. Disruptive to parents, we found to be, somewhat effective, but not a great PD session. And we're recommending changing that and putting a PD day, an additional PD day in March. And so that's where we are as of today. Both of the calendars, have a shorter winter break, so that students end a little earlier. As we mentioned last time, in our 2021 school year, so not this coming fall, but the fall after. Labor Day is very late. It's September 7th. And how do we arrange this calendar so that we aren't going into that third week in June? I think this was the best compromise from teachers and DPAC parents and others that we heard. Hopefully we'll get additional feedback on I believe it's the 19th, and then bring this back to the board for action at the second meeting in January. questions, comments, anything?
Thank you very much, Rick, because in just the last 2 weeks, after a 2-week-long break from just school during winter, for the winter break, I heard from so many people on both sides. There is truly, truly no solution that will make everyone happy on this. So I'm just grateful for all the work you've been doing, trying to listen to all of these different people who have an opinion, and we are going to continue to do that before we act on this. But I'm just asking, there are lots of Facebook comments, there's been emails where everyone seems to think this is so simple, and why don't we just? And I'm asking everybody to please listen to each other too. At the same time, listen to the teachers, listen to other parents, because there are so many things that just have to be taken into account. There truly is no easy way to do this.
I agree, and that said, thank you for just the work that goes into this on your part, Rick, because we know that there's no easy way for you to do this.
Well, and I don't do it alone. There's a lot of people that are looking at it, improving things. The other thing we just wanted to mention now, there has been discussion about 2020-21 school year, big election year, school safety, access to schools and students during the voting days. We do have an option that would be not holding school on that election day. We're not bringing that at this time, but we do have one ready, and we're going to continue to work with the city on polling places and access and those kinds of things over the year. But we are ready in the event that we would have to make a change, and then we would be bringing that back to the board next December, January, for consideration. Either should we have school on election day, or do we think that it would be better for a lot of reasons not to? So, but we do have a plan.
Rick, I'll be curious to hear what the teacher feedback is and how that splits out, because there probably are different of opinions, but there may be a stronger opinion on one side or the other. Because I do notice this next calendar, the 1921, would have teachers coming back if they came back right after, on Thursday, January 2nd for 2 days. And I know my office had people there, but there wasn't a lot of productivity happening on those 2 days. And I just kind of wonder if the teachers would be better recharged to hit our ground running on the 6th. And I'm just curious to hear more about what their feedback is to you. Parents may be ready. I'm just wondering how our teachers are doing.
Yeah, and we have heard from teachers. There are teachers who feel strongly that 2 weeks is the right answer. There's teachers that feel strongly that getting back and getting out earlier is better. I would say it's not exactly 50-50, but it's somewhere in the 60-40 range of people who feel strongly that we really like a full 2-week break. And yet there's 40% or so that say, I'm ready to get back, let's get rolling. So
I do appreciate all the work that goes into this and all the consideration, but our primary focus is what is best for kids, and time, learning, and preparing them according to our mission statement. And so I know that our teachers spend a good part of the summer break recharging. Some of them take additional classes. Some of them work at summer school. So while I appreciate the desire for that 2 weeks in the winter, when you look at the overall schedule, that has to also be considered. And that is just the nature of being in school, and our purpose is to educate our students first. So bear that in mind as we listen and keep considering?
Yeah, board members Waters and members of the board, that is a consideration. Our superintendent keeps that in front of us all the time. Our most disadvantaged students, this may be the safest place for them. This may be the most nutritious meals they get. And so, yeah, we are aware that having, schools open and having students engaged in learning is, the best option.
Maybe this has been talked about, but if we're talking about postponing the decision, is there some deadline where you'd like to hear?
Yes, we would, we would seriously love the board to approve next fall's calendar as at the next meeting. We start to push back farther and farther. Getting the registration night, the back to school nights, the even something as simple as the kids' place childcare calendar. They want to be able to say when they're going to be open, when they're going to be closed, and we're running right up against their deadlines to go to press at this point.
Rick, thank you so much. Sorry, we're going to have to take one more meeting to get this done. But we have listening sessions, and there are ways to contact us. So if you haven't made your voice heard and you want to, there's still time. So next up, we are doing a first reading, policy development. It's a first reading of policies 503.3, admission of resident student, 503.4, assignment of students to schools, and 503.5, released time for students. Getting our technology hooked up, and then we'll go.
Chair Gores, members of the board, so with these three policies, these are all subset policies of our student attendance policy. And based on what I was able to determine from looking at MSBA policy, these are local policies. So these are policies that 503.3, 503.4, and 503.5 that were created here in St. Louis Park Public Schools. I've presented the policies to you as they were written. In the past, there have not been any modifications made to them. So what you're seeing tonight is the policies as they currently exist, and just wanting to open it up for discussion to see if there are any changes the board believes we need to make at this time. I should also add the reason that we are bringing them tonight for board review is that they fit into our annual policy review timeline, and just looking at some of the dates in which the policies were either adopted or last affirmed.
Thank you. I have just on 503.3 what I consider just in the nature of type suggestions. The first one says, as a general rule, a pupil's school residence is where his parents live. I think we could change his to the child's parents live. And then I think in the third paragraph it says all cases involving question of resident. I believe that should be residence, since the whole policy is about the residence of the student. Do you see what I'm?
Yep.
And I can give this to you.
Perfect.
I just had a question about if you could speak to how these policies sort of align with our procedures. Is this what our current practice is or not?
Yeah, admission of resident students, we certainly continue to have students attend their attendance area schools. So I would say yes, these still align with the practices that we implement here in the school district.
I don't know if there should be a change. I did get a complaint once about someone's kid who was allowed to go to a different elementary school for 1 year, and then maybe there wasn't space. So if they're allowed to open enroll at another elementary 1 year, that doesn't guarantee them a following year after that?
You know, the only recollection I have of students remaining in schools that are not their attendance area schools would be, for example, if a family, let's just say, lives in the Peter Hobart attendance area, and maybe midway through the year they move to Aquila. Actually, I remember the situation from last year. They moved to Aquila attendance area. What we don't do is in the middle of the school year, we don't require families to transition schools. So we have allowed families to stay for the remainder of that school year with the understanding that the following year that they would need to attend their attendance area school. Those are the only type of situations that I'm aware of. And I think you're referring to 503.4. There are also situations in which there's a provision in 503.4, and I'm trying to remember which condition it directly speaks to, but in situations in which childcare or daycare is in a specific, school attendance area, that is also a provision in which the school district has allowed students to attend schools a school that is not in their attendance area, a child care provision. Is that what you were thinking? Okay.
All right, then next up on the agenda is policy development second reading. Policy is 503, right? Student attendance, 503.1, early kindergarten admission, and 503.2, school attendance areas.
Chair Gores, members of the board, this is our second reading of these policies. The last time around, there was some feedback or guidance from the board to just make sure that we take a closer look at the procedure connected to 503 to ensure that that procedure aligned with our practice. We have taken a look at that procedure and have made modifications since that time. But besides that recommendation, there were no other recommendations given at that time. So we would recommend that during the action agenda that these policies be approved.
Any other comments on those? Hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. And we'll take the consent agenda that deals with the organization of the school board. Well, let me just, first, there's a resolution in the part of the consent agenda that deals with the organization of the school board. And would there be a motion to waive the reading of that resolution?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. And then just for folks at home to know, our consent agenda Karen, do we do the first consent agenda and then we do the organizational consent agenda? Is that how we've done it?
So the consent agenda is an action in of itself, and we're going to deal with the organizational meeting stuff that we've already discussed, including the resolution that designates Superintendent Aston Osai as our district's responsible authority for 2019-20. We have to do that every year. It's a state mandate, yeah.
What I'm just wondering is I've got this separate one that has a motion on it, and then I've got the agenda that has a motion. So I'm wondering if we're doing a two-part consent agenda in two parts.
No, I'm just seeing it in one consent agenda. Is that what you have?
Okay. Well, and just for those watching at home, in terms of the organization of the board, what the consent agenda includes is designating our depository for legal purposes, designating our accounts, the banks that we use, designating how we transfer electronic funds, the authority to make investments, the authority to disperse salaries, the authority for early claim payments, authorizations to purchase, the deputy clerk and deputy treasurer, check signatures, who we're appointing as school attorneys for various legal functions, and then the resolution that we just waived the reading of that appoints district responsibility authority for certain privacy requirements. So that's generally what's in the consent agenda. Okay? So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Ann, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda passes 6-0. Now we're up to the action agenda. The first topic on the action agenda is a school board compensation, and I will open this up to any motion.
If I could insert a clarification quickly before we move, I don't want to misrepresent anything, and I did my quick math incorrectly. We are not in the bottom 3 of 34 metro school districts. We are in the bottom quarter of 45 metro school districts. So of the 45 school districts in the metro, there are 10 that have lower pay rates than ours for the board. So I apologize for that error earlier.
Thank you. Is there a motion anyone wants to make on the school board compensation?
I'm going to make a motion, but it's maybe not aligned with the conversation that we had prior, but no one was saying anything. So I make a motion that we leave the rates the same as we had last year.
Okay, moved in second. Any discussion on that?
So that said, I think it would be important that the board take a serious look at compensation to be ready for the organizing meeting for January 2020, because by statute, at this meeting, we have to make a determination about it. So I would even offer to head up a little committee if necessary in order to tackle this question.
Yeah, I have looked at the data, and Hopkins, which is a neighbor of ours, has a pay rate that is over $1,000 more, certainly for about $1,000 more for the chair, and it's, but roughly $1,000 more for the other officers that I'm seeing here. And Spring Lake Park, which is similarly situated to us in terms of size of the district, has pay that is, we're at $5,100 for the chair, they're at $5,950, so there's an $800 difference, and there's about a roughly $1,000 difference on the other options. So having said that, Joe, I'm going to vote against your motion because I think it would be appropriate to increase, probably even maybe annually, although that's really hard, but so it wouldn't be a big increase when you do that. And I know that we haven't talked about a number or any recommendation, and I had at first had thought 2% would be $90 and it would be $100 across the board. That might be too low to get us in a midpoint. So, if it were me making, Joe's motion is in front of us, but I'm just saying I'd come around to perhaps a $200 bump up if yours gets defeated. But it may get passed. We'll find out. All right. All in favor of Joe's motion to keep the school board compensation the same for the coming year?
Aye.
Any nays? Nay? Okay, motion carries 5-1. Did anybody abstain?
I abstained.
Okay, sorry. So 2 abstentions. So 3 in favor, 2 abstentions, and 1 nay. And to record it accurately, Ann Casey abstained, and Mary Tombeck abstained, and Gores voted nay. So then in favor of it, you have Tatalovich, Beneke, and Waters.
I'm going to volunteer to lead a committee to work on this for next year.
All right, next up, we have the school board listening sessions. It is recommended that the school board approve the selected dates for the upcoming 2019 school board listening sessions as presented. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mary. Is there a second? Second by Joe. All in favor?
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, sorry.
Did we select dates in March and May, or are those to be determined yet?
There were dates in the board packet.
They weren't.
I think there were
There were
options
options.
for each one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in March, we were considering March 4th, March 19th, March 28th. The time would be 7 to 8:30 at the middle school. And then in May, we were looking at May 9th, May 16th, May 21, from 6 to 7 at Lenox. So if I could just point out something, so the 19th is a Saturday, March 4th would be a Monday, and then May 21 would be a Tuesday, so that kind of hits some different parts of the week to help people's schedules.
Well, I know that I am out of town on March 19th, but there are 6 other board members, so.
Was suggesting May 21 to be on a Tuesday. I bet it conflicts with something else, but I know when the options were being posed, we were trying to not conflict with so many things on the calendar, but it's hard. It's hard to, just like the annual calendar for schools, this one is tough too, but the listening sessions is an important function that we do so that the community can have access and conversation with board members. If you look in the audience tonight, there's no one here. This is our board meeting. It's not necessarily a great place to dialogue with members of the community.
The only conflict I see is that there's a SEAC meeting on the 21st, but if we're meeting from 6 to 7 at Lenox and then going right to the SEAC meeting, that would actually work just fine, so.
And then did we narrow down one for March?
I was proposing Monday, March 4th to be a day part that would be helpful, and then proposing Tuesday, May 21st, again, to try to hit different parts of the week for access purposes. I do like how we've picked different locations and times as well. Thank you, Julia. March 4th would be from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the middle school.
So the motion for the listening sessions would be January 19th from 10:30 a.m. to 12 at the district office. March 4th, 2019, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the middle school, Media Center 1 and 2. And Tuesday, May 21st, from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Lenox Room 115 Craft Room. Is there and that, Karen, is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, and is there a second for Karen? And seconded by Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, 6-0.
I'm tentatively, well, I will fully throw my, not tentative anymore, fully throwing my hat into the March 4th one. Because I have conflicts on the other ones, so.
So if you want to have a listening session with Joe, come March 4th. And the next up is our school board liaisons. It is recommended that the school board approve the recommended 2019 school board liaisons as presented. Is there a motion? Did I skip them? It's moved by Mary. Is there a second? Okay, I'll go back. All right, well, okay, we'll go back then. All right, we did. I was going to go back after this one, but we'll go. Okay, let's stay with liaisons, get those down. Okay, so we have a motion on the liaisons by Mary. Is there a second? All right, all in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carry, any abstain? Carries 6-0. Thanks, Ann. I'll go back to the school board meeting dates. Right, I just had a little sidebar here with Aston, and we're going to recommend the school board meeting dates as presented, and the one that we are not doing on November 11th, we will do on November 12th. That way we're not having a meeting 2 weeks in a row, and we think that'll be easier on the staff in terms of getting presentations and materials to us. So, so I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ann. Any discussion?
Thanks for that quick amendment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 6-0. And then, so now we're moving down to on the policy development second reading. Policies 503, student attendance, 503.1, early kindergarten admission, 503.2, school attendance areas. Is there a motion to approve that, those policies as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Karen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mary. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 6-0. Did I hit all the action, folks? All right. So now we are up to communications and transmittals.
Thank you. So the high school winter 1X start on Friday, January 18th at the auditorium. That's a wonderful thing to view, and the actors really appreciate a full house in the audience. So I encourage you, 7 p.m. Friday, January 18th, high school winter 1X in the auditorium.
We hear a lot about athletic activity during our meetings. Shout out to our music students in the district. This weekend, I had the pleasure of attending the Central Minnesota Band Directors Association Honor Band in Elk River, where 2 of our middle school students and 4 of our high school band students played. And the way this was described by the guest conductors who were brought in, who are incredibly accomplished in their fields, were brought in to conduct our students, along with several others, obviously, dozens and dozens of others throughout the metros, described this as doing 4 to 6 weeks of rehearsals in 6 hours. And they all played beautifully. So I don't have everybody's first and last names in front of me, so I don't want to mess this up. But to those students, and particularly then to Hannah Pagel and Steve Schmitz, who are their directors, really great job, well done. And the conductors made a comment about how incredibly lucky we are in here in Minnesota, and particularly in this region, to have such incredibly strong band programs. And so I am personally grateful, and well done to our students.
Is my first act as the new rep to the 287 board. I will plug the Policymakers Summit that's coming up on Friday, February 8th from 10 a.m. to noon at the North Education Center, talking about childhood trauma. It says that schools have become the front line of the children's mental health system. Let's have a conversation about becoming trauma sensitive. So any board member is welcome to join. I think a couple of us are already planning on going. Again, that's Friday, February 8th with Intermediate District 287. And to follow up with what Mary said, I didn't even think of this. I went to an amazing Quiz Bowl tournament this weekend, and we had two of our middle school Quiz Bowl. Two of the three teams advanced to the playoff rounds, and we had two students place in the top 11 students out of, I think, over 90 students individually. So super fun. I did not know how fun Quiz Bowl was, but pretty exciting. And also great sportsmanship by our kids. That was what I really noticed the most, that our kids, all three of our teams just displayed really epic sportsmanship, as sportspersonship as they were playing. So thank you.
You were in Elk River too, weren't you? We were all up there together, yes.
And just to piggyback on what Ann was saying, one of the things the 287 school board has done is done some book reading as a board, and then had some book discussions about that, and sometimes had facilitators to come in and lead that discussion as part of its board development. And the book that it just read was The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, and that is by Dr. Perry, and it's about trauma, childhood trauma, and how it impacts the development of the brain, and how that then interferes with some learning because kids are not in the same, the brain is not necessarily in the same place. And Dr. Perry has sort of, over time, worked out a neurosequential way of dealing with that kind of trauma so that kids can begin to develop those areas that were lagging and to fill the gaps that then prepares them more and more for learning. It's a fascinating book, fascinating stories. They're obviously the more traumatic stories, but we all sort of at some level have probably been touched by that. And one of the key concepts was relationships and community, and sort of an open acceptance of the differences as we grow into ourselves, and meeting students where they are, right? Not expecting everybody to be at the same level of development at the same chronological time for whatever happens in people's lives. And one of the experts that was there facilitating the study wisely said, teachers don't have to be therapists, but they can be therapeutic. And I was reminded, I hadn't thought of this in probably 60 years, but I was reminded in that conversation about a kindergarten teacher that I had, and I either saw it or I was told about it, and it stuck with me. But every morning when a little girl would arrive in her class, she would braid that little girl's hair, because whatever was happening at home, there wasn't time to get it done. Whether mom was there or not there, or had deceased, or dad was overwhelmed, or there were too many kids, who knows? She didn't need to know. She just needed to know that there was a little need there, and she could meet it, and that child could be cared for and set the stage for the next level of learning for that day. And so I think all of our teachers in their own ways, when they're really working at their best, are doing that for all of our students. And the book was really instructive on that way we could think about education as helping to meet those needs so that kids can learn. Right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Joe. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, 6:00. Thanks, everybody.